These, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just don't walk in.
You have to tie me up because I'm bad about that. Okay. The small inset that shows Florida shows the northern district, which has different formations, geological formations that also have phosphate-rich pockets in them. The Bone Valley shows you that it was the largest one in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I like about this little visual aid here is that worldwide, I mean, we tend to think, just about this area where this is all we are right here, but when you start thinking, Mosaic is a global company. And so they, along with other companies, mine throughout the world. And what I find interesting is that if you think about how the formations were deposited in the first place, going back to Ice Age and that particular time, and how other fossil fuels are formed, the places that seem to be very rich with the deposits, now different types, but look at the igneous deposits. We're looking at areas where, there was probably really rampant, Ice Age animals happening at that time. If you think about it, Africa is what they call the cradle of civilization. I don't know if that's now being currently debated, but I think that is. But it's fascinating to see that it can be in so many different places, and now the quality and quantity of deposits will vary greatly by virtue of where it is.
Are metamorphic deposits?
Mineral deposits?
Yeah, mineral deposits.
The
Metamorphic.
metamorphic.
Deposits.
They're the deposits that have the different types of materials together, and they're also, variable. They change, like metamorphosis. So they change and they can evolve and become different things with time through geological processes and different exposures to different things.
Like we see the igneous and we see the sedimentary, but we don't see the metamorphic deposits.
And it's not that much, it doesn't seem to be that significant pertaining to the phosphate because of how specific, and because they are looking for it to be comprised primarily of the phosphorus that became phosphate. I suspect, and I'm guessing, that the metamorphic aspect doesn't really go into it as much. I mean, that's a good one I would have to look up more to be 100% certain on. But the other...
it's kind of like the part of the rock cycles you study.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't have to get to that point and they can mine it when it's still igneous or it's still sedimentary, then that's where they found that they need. But if it gets to the metamorphic process, then it may not be suitable for their needs and may not have a high enough phosphate content. I'm not exactly sure what their requirements are, but that's a good question.
How big is the phosphate?
How big
Yeah.
is phosphate?
Or mosaic, sorry.
Oh, how big is it? Well, it's global. It's listed on NASDAQ. It's huge. Locally, it's not as big as it was, but it's still the largest mining company in Florida. There's, if I'm not mistaken, there's two others. Locally, there's CF Industries. Hey, right on time. And then there's, want to say one or two others that are mining in the northern deposits, and I'll show you a better example here. This is one of my favorites. This shows you guys are from Alachua. Well, you have the Denellen Formation that runs right through there, and it kind of filters down back south. But this is brilliant because it gives you the different types. It's hard rock phosphate as opposed to land pebble phosphate. And what they had in Peace River when they first started mining was river pebble phosphate. So they found, and the transition went from the hardships of mining in the river to, wait, we just found this on land. This is excellent quality phosphate. It suits our needs and far easier to mine, which means less manpower, less money, larger profit. So they hit the pay dirt when they found that, literally. I didn't mean to make a pun, but.
Yeah.
And this is the video, and that's a good example right there. You wanted to, that's an obsolete bucket. That's way too small for what they use now. And what I meant by the layout, it looks like the surface of the moon.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of does to me because it, it's craters and they're just, it's kind of crazy. And then you see these little buildings, and when the guys come in from the mine, sometimes we're lucky, they'll come in after a shift or
Is
something.
this what, like Mosaic? What do you look like?
Oh, this is from Mosaic.
Oh,
This is
that's
from
what
one of
they
their
look like
sites,
right
yes.
there.
It's
Okay.
just dated, it doesn't have the most recent, we're in the process of getting all of this redone, this whole room. And see, look off in the background, and you start to see the magnitude of how much land. It's thousands and thousands of acres.
Wow.
Yeah.
And some of them have been purchased
And this is just in Florida?
Yeah.
Here?
years and years, just in central Florida.
Wow.
I mean, just in that little red pocket there. So, there's a lot of different processes that take place. That's the cogeneration plant. And that, safety pays. Gotta show that one, right? Promotion.
Yeah.
So the government doesn't get on, because there was a huge accident. It was a sore eye for the industry, when it first started out,
What
because
happened?
people would get injured. It was so easy, it was very primitive, and the conditions, as you can see, are pretty brutal, especially summertime. Being up there, it's very reflective material, it gets hot, you're getting dust moved around a lot, so, a lot of heavy machinery, so there was a high injury rate, which is no longer the case.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, that's.
So what changed? The suits?
Their techniques, yeah, they can't afford to lose people. When you look at what they used to operate with,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
that explains a lot about, wow, they started with this, and now they're doing that. So you get the kind of visual impact of how much it's changed. From ox or horse mule drawn carts to these big, giant, multi-million-dollar machines.
So who is really paying for all this?
Mosaic pays for it. People pay for it eventually because it's part of
They
the
buy their
economy.
products.
Yeah, it's embedded in the world economy, in the global economy.
Mm.
And there's anyone who eats is contributing to the industry, basically.
Yeah.
Because that to me looks like a crazy moonscape.
Yeah.
But to think that that can be restored is, gives me some hope and restores my faith.
What did Mosaic produce?
What does Mosaic? It produces many different materials worldwide. Locally, in this case, they produce phosphate, and a good example is some of the materials that they have are here. And, that's quite a lot. And these are all different things that the farmers would use. And an example they show, like these are some of the testing fields. And that's how they were able to fine tune what crop is going to need. So there you go. It goes into the agricultural business side. Also, it's helping agronomy because a study, not only does it work in our country, but think about the nations that are less developed, that need to feed a lot of people cheaply. So that's why there's a constant need, and it continues, and why they're able to have so much money and why they're able to be so big. Because it's invaluable to the whole cycle of life, I guess you could say.
I guess with the fertilizer, that NPN, that would be the P in the middle, I guess, the phosphorus.
Yes, and the oxygen, and then they have the whole, so they'll go in and they'll grid and plot and plant certain types. They have genotypes and phenotypes of the corn and all that. They'll go in and they'll test to see what's helping it grow more, what's working.
Who buys Mosaic?
Who buys?
Yeah. Like farmers? or
Farmers
government?
on a huge scale. We get visitors from Minnesota. We love to see them. They come in and you could tell they have the Mosaic hat on, and they're just the salt of the earth, like what I think of, like, make this country great. they come in and they've just been, oh, we're on vacation, but we wanted to see where our fertilizer comes from because we've got this many thousands of acres and we farm in Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota. They're coming from the central, plains and everything, and it's nice to see that trickle down effect because you get a face connected to, and I always thank a farmer. If it wasn't for them, where would our Pizza Hut and Doritos be? This is an example of the cogeneration plant that you saw in that video. And this is huge. And
Now, where is this?
This, I don't know exactly where that picture was taken. It could be at one of the currently functioning mines.
Would this be what Mosaic looked like? This right here?
No, it's just one of the aspects that would be found at an actively mined site. So this is not exactly where they're digging, but this is this is part of the process. And it explains it right here. And it captures all the waste. And because think about it, business, they're in it to make money. They have to answer to shareholders, their chairman of the board. They have to make profits. So how do they make profits? Well, in one way, it helps the environment if they think about ways of reusable, replenishing resources that they may be depleting. And with that, they found that they can start to produce electricity, which they sell back to the grid. They have to recycle all of the water, almost about, I think it used to be 92, and it may be higher, about 98% of the water. It's a very water-intensive industry.
Oh, wow.
But they recycle that, kind of like nuclear power plants, how they have the cooling channels, same kind of concept. Then, what else?
If present growth rates continue,
That is talking about the need for the demand for the phosphate because of the world population. So that's where that comes into play. Like I said about the developing countries,
real show population growth.
how they need to
Present.
feed themselves, feed their people. And so how the best way they can do that is by the research that they do, fine-tuning what species responds well to what combination, and let's use that. And I'm sure that I don't know all about agriculture that much, my daughter helped me on that one, but how they have to be able to maximize their efforts,
Historical references will be provided by
What is phosphate?
Phosphate is you can grab some outside, it's a rock, and it looks like any rock, but it's kind of powdery and whitish looking.
Oh, wow.
And if you've
That's
never,
cool.
yeah, it's right out here in the pile. And that
I don't think
comes-
I ever held one.
Yeah, you can. When you step out right by that big bucket, that is brought to us in tractor trailer loads directly from the mines. They scoop it like you saw, then they put it on their conveyor belts, sorted by size, and put it on the back of a truck and bring it. And in the phosphate rock, the treasure is the fossils that people dig out there for. So within
That's cool.
all of that phosphate matrix, there's a lot of fossils that are really amazing to find because it just goes to prove that, wow, we were really underwater. Look at all these shark's teeth. Look at all these stingray mouth plates and barbs and, just a vertebrae, all kinds of stuff.
Oh, wow.
Mastodon teeth.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you get that from the rock?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's mixed in with it because as it's being dug, I imagine that it gets broken up some. But they used to be able to go in, paleontologists, and actively seek out fossils. But because of liability and insurance and being such a litigious society, that no longer happens. So there is a strong, how should I say, contingency out there, scientific community that feels that we are not serving history and science in the best way with the current process that we have for mining. They feel that, we should be able to balance the mining needs and the need to produce, but also be able to preserve some of what used to be found. I mean, what we know should be there, but we're just not able to look for it. It would halt production. So that costs them money. One of the guys that comes in that welds on buckets at the mines said that for every hour that they don't dig, I think it was something like $8 million for it sitting idle for 1 hour. If they actually have to, normally they won't stop, so they work while it's actively. These guys are harnessed and hooked in to these big diggers, and they're walking around trying to weld stuff, and it's a 24/7 operation. They run at night.
wow.
When you see this picture here, it represents it. Like if you were to drive south into Hardy County at night, it's like you're completely pitch black, very rural. Then you come upon this distant light, which gets larger and larger, almost like you would think UFO or something, from the movie Cocoon or something, that it just, this light starts to become bigger, and what it is the mining. They're mining all the time.
That's interesting.
So much money, can't stop. And a lot of people depend on jobs and livelihood, and not to mention the whole feeding people. It sucks.
Yeah. I can't do that.
If present growth rates continue, our population will double in about 15 years.
Is there negative environment effects from the smoke,
Oh,
from the stacks?
from the stacks from here? I'm sure that there are, but not the type of concerns that we used to see with coal-generated plants, mostly like in the Northeast. We used to have major issues. Because of the EPA regulations and trial and error over so many years, we don't have a very large, that's never one of the issues that comes up that is a predominant concern, is emission from the stacks that are being, most of the stacks, like what they started to do with the coal mines and the coal producing electrical plants, is because of acid rain. I don't know if you remember the 70s when they started to discover acid rain. It was really bad. It was eroding valuable monuments. Okay, well, they started to create the stacks differently with scrubbers built in and all kinds of environmental ways that concerning to reduce the emissions so that it wouldn't be detrimental to everything around it. Now, I'm certain that they cannot eliminate toxic emissions 100%, but at the point that they are now, whatever that point is, it is not one of the concerns that we hear connected to the phosphate industry. We mostly hear about the stripping of the land, the loss of valuable ecosystems and habitats, animal displacement, species loss, whether it's plant or animal. Those are major environmental concerns. And so those continue to be addressed and studied and techniques perfected to get better and better at dealing with that and making up for the damage done. We gotta get better.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, I knew they had phosphate factory, but I just knew
You've been going to this state in Florida?
Yep.
Low levels of radiation, so it has to sit. I mean, they can't, with every other item that they have, because it is a business and it's such a big, lucrative business, they have found ways to produce other marketable materials. You know, they produce a lot of sulfuric acid for industrial uses. But with the gypsum, it's just not viable, at least not with the technology we currently have. So it has to sit, and it's been mandated the last time that I understand that I read, it was about 20 years or more, has to sit just for the radiation to. The EPA mandated that, and so that's part of the technique of mining. They are going to 65-foot deep scoop, and that's just one. They take that, and then they have huge guns of water. They call them water guns. So once the bucket drops off, pile off, they're going to hose it off, and they create a slurry. And this is all in that first gallery, actually. There's a video that shows you that shows you the scene of, did you see that? Of what it looked like? Okay, that's the one if you walk in, it's on the far left upper. But then also on the wall, it has a flow chart that shows you each step of the process. And actually, it needs to be updated because the bucket that we have when you first walk in, it looks huge. 12 men fit in there, shoulder to shoulder. That is outdated, and that's how we got to have it because it's obsolete. So now their capacity continues to grow. The technology is getting better. They're able to spot, geologists go in way before they ever start the process. They have to do all their samples to find out where it's going to be. You don't want to just willy-nilly go in like they used to do. They go in and they're going to want to maximize profit. They're going to find what they need to with doing the least damage because that means less money for reclamation. So they are getting better and better, specific-wise, of being able to say, yeah, that's valuable, or we're going to go there next. And I'm sure that they have like a 10-year plan, 10 years out. Okay, our next spot's going to be, we don't know what that is, but I think maybe, I'm certain they must have something to that effect, if not even more sophisticated. The history of phosphate, it started out with mid to late 1800s. They found that a certain type of a rock, primarily in the Peace River, would make things grow. And in Florida, the Bone Valley area, that's how it all started. It took many years of them hit or miss, trying, going in by hand with picks and shovels, working in a very fast-flowing river, which has since been diverted many times and the flow has changed. So the conditions that they worked under when it was, late 1800s in Florida, it was really, really brutal. They would lay tracks alongside the area they were working on the riverbank and have mules and carts. And basically they were hand shoveling out onto those carts. And they had to keep moving their track as they went.
Where is Peace River at?
Peace River it's actually in Polk County, but it originates, let me show you a very good visual aid. Okay, this is the Peace River.
You get to keep that, Jess.
Oh yeah, this is yours, definitely. And as you can see, Lakeland is here, and we're in between. And it originates here at Lake Hancock, flows southwest, and empties into Punta Gorda, into the estuary, and then out into the Gulf. Each of these sites are valuable sites in that they've been mined, that they were rich in phosphate deposits, and as a result, fossils were found in those areas. And as a byproduct of the mining, this area, the 5-county area, came to be known as Bone Valley. And that's how it got that name, that moniker. So.
How does phosphate disturb the groundwater?
How does it get into the groundwater?
Yeah, get into the groundwater.
Okay, well, phosphorus is a natural element, and it's found in the ocean. And through the same process that I would imagine, when I pictured in my mind, as fossil fuels are created, with the continual deposit of phosphate combining with decaying creatures and sea life, soils, time compresses. I mean, I'm talking millions and millions of years, geological terms, which are really hard to fathom, you know. And so through that process, eventually, that phosphorus is turned into phosphate. And then it is deposited with the ebbing and flowing of the ocean during ice ages and glacier movement. It came to be deposited in different areas of Florida. And because of the geological, I guess, deposits that are in the 5-county area known as Boone Valley, it sat higher, so it allowed for possibly like that island effect to happen, which at some point may have trapped more creatures, more of the Ice Age animals here, and that's what we believe is how they came to be concentrated in such a small area. I mean, relatively small considering. And we're not the only place that phosphate is found. It's found throughout the world in pockets, and I know that they actively mine in 3 locations in Florida. There's different formations, and they are actually in that first gallery, which might be a good idea for us to walk over there if you don't mind, because you can actually pan to it. I'll put that in here. This is a neat site because I've been able to see it at work, and because firsthand, I think they've got about, and I could be wrong, they've got about 3 different areas and different levels of progression. One is completely done. The first year after the wetland was completed and the water started to restore its natural flow through the area, they were shocked to see how many migratory birds had already found the area and were using it during the wintering period. It was absolutely stunning to see these species that, you know, you have to go like really out of your way to go see if you're a birder, but they were all there together. I mean, just bam, in the middle, and it was just really crazy. And so now they're restoring more and more, and it costs millions of dollars for these projects. I mean, there's huge money at stake. There's people whose businesses are nothing but doing reclaimed land, and people who do nothing but sell the material. I mean, you know, you see the whole filter down business side of it. So with that said, I mean, I guess it boosts the economy, but the end result of the reclamation is really amazing. So yeah, okay, I get disheartened when I drive into work and I see that they're just stripping all the land, you know, and gosh, they're beautiful. What about the creatures living there? And, okay, well, I know that this has been going on way before I ever was alive and lived here. But now they have rules in place. And the rules, yeah, I may not get to see it in my lifetime because of the, there's a byproduct when they mine the phosphate. They also, in the process of sorting out the material, have stacks, which you may have seen in the first gallery, of gypsum, and it has low levels of radiation. Oh yeah, all day.
Should we wait?